Did Neil deGrasse Tyson lie about the intelligent design argument? Recently, popular atheist activist Neil deGrasse Tyson claimed that the only reason people believe in intelligent design is because they don't understand complex life.
They're looking at something more complicated than they can understand and saying, there's the intelligence.
However, is this claim true? Or is Neil deGrasse Tyson simply lying about the intelligent design argument? If you want to know, then please watch this video until the very end. So, let's get started.
There is a point of view that says, this universe is so amazing. There had to be a God, an intelligence behind it.
The intelligent design people.
So in that case, they're not looking at a rock and saying there's intelligence behind it.
Right.
They're looking at something more complicated than they can understand.
Right.
And saying, there's the intelligence.
That's not the argument at all. The intelligent design argument is basically the idea that the watchmaker analogy, right? For example, you're walking down the street and you find a watch and you see that watch and you see it's very intricately designed. From that, you conclude that clearly this is designed by someone, right? The same logic applies to many of the complex creation in nature, right? Because the thing is that if complexity leads to a logical conclusion of an intelligence, then complexity in nature should also lead us to conclude that there is an intelligence behind it. That's basically how the argument goes. So first, we need to understand what they mean by intelligence, right? For example, cell phone that I'm recording on, it is clearly made up of parts, right? So one sign of intelligent design is that it has to be made up of parts. Now each part play a role, a very specific role. If you take one of those parts away, the thing doesn't work or doesn't work as it's supposed to be. All of this is a sign of intelligence. Why? Because clearly this shows that someone or something had to put them together for them to work. Now, sure, you could say, oh, all these different parts, they just came together by themselves, but that requires more explanation. If you just say, oh, it's just time, that doesn't explain anything, because then why doesn't that logic apply in the real world? Like if we see like a watch, we don't assume that watch just came together by itself. So obviously this is not a logic we use in the real world. So why would you apply that here? And if you use simple Occam's razor, clearly the best logical conclusion is that it's designed by someone. But he doesn't look at any of this. He just says, oh, this theist. They don't understand how complex organisms work, so they just believe in God, right? No, that's not the argument. Like, what are you even talking about?
They're looking at something more complicated than they can understand.
Right.
And saying, there's the intelligence.
Right? You look at nature, and is there things in nature that are made up of parts? Yes, there is. Okay. And do those parts play a very specific role? Yes, they do. If you take one of those parts away, do they work differently? Or enough parts away, do they work differently than the way they're supposed to work? Yes. So clearly this shows, this thing had to be put together by some kind of intelligence. Or the alternative would be just by random chance, which is very unlikely. So if that's the case, then when this thing is put together and it serves a specific purpose, that means it's been designed by someone. Now, of course, like there are objections to this, but he doesn't go into it. Like, for example, people could argue that, this has been done by evolution and whatnot. There's just a lot of really long time. But as I explained, really long time is not a good logical conclusion. It doesn't follow. Right? Because the thing is, if you're saying that if you give it enough time, anything can happen, anything possible can happen, then anything would happen, but anything doesn't happen, right? Like, for example, if we go out in the street, if we see that a man has been stabbed with a knife, and the usual conclusion with stabbings is that it happens a lot, then it's very logical for me to assume that someone stabbed this person, right? However, it would not be very logical if I assume that a knife just came together by itself and accidentally just went into his heart by itself, like some kind of final destination or something, right? It doesn't happen. Same thing here. For example, if you see an eye which looks clearly designed, right, like just like a human creation, then the most logical option here would be that it's actually designed by something.
Okay.
I mean, there's some people that even on a macro level, they're like, we live in the Goldilocks zone of these planets, and the other planets are dead as far as we're concerned.
As far as we know. That's
as
right.
far as we know.
So with all of these parameters in just the right way, in just the right place, people who are lean religious refer to it as the fine-tuning argument.
Interesting. Okay.
Everything's fine-tuned
Right.
to produce life,
Right.
human life.
Right.
Now, so
He's a God of precision that has placed things in this perfect
configuration,
kind of synchronicity.
Yes,
that
okay.
all the gears mesh and everything works so that we get life.
And we pop out.
And we pop out.
Exactly.
Right.
I don't argue the fact that we have constants of nature that if they were slightly different, we wouldn't be here. I don't have an argument against that.
I mean, that's...
But my argument, however, is if whoever created the universe, if there's such an entity that did, why make a universe where we didn't show up for 13.8 billion years?
So usually the way fine-tuning argument goes is that, for example, the cosmological constant, right? Which is basically kind of like the energy density of the empty space or like dark energy, right? The idea here is that if this constant, maybe if it was a bit too much, then gravity would be kind of like so dense that nothing would form because everything would be too tightly tied together. And if it was too loose, then everything would expand so quickly, nothing would be able to form and everything would be pulled apart. Right? The argument goes like, why is it that we're in an universe where we had this kind of like constant that led to life on Earth, as opposed to in another universe where it didn't lead to life on Earth? And so far, he completely failed to answer that. Like he just said, oh, but if this is really the case that God is the one who did it, then why did it take so long for him to do it? But that's not a logical objection to the argument here. I mean, like, it doesn't matter when God does it. That doesn't solve the problem of fine-tuning, right? I mean, like, you still have the problem of fine-tuning. It doesn't matter how long it takes. Imagine you're in a jungle, right? And then after 50 years, you come back and you see that someone built a really beautiful house there, right? Then if someone suggests that, well, clearly someone with intelligence made this house, right? Will your objection then be that, yeah, but then why did it take him like 50 years to do this? Clearly, this just happened by itself, right? No! Of course not. I mean, like, obviously it doesn't matter how long it takes. It still takes intelligence to do this, right? Same thing here. It's just a non sequitur. It doesn't logically follow. I mean, it doesn't matter whether or not God decided to do it later or earlier.
Not only that, Earth was not born until the universe was already 8-9 billion years old.
Right.
And then life begins, single-celled organisms. Is this the God of that life? Okay. But that was 3.8 billion years ago. Humans in our current form last, 100,000 years or so, go to a million years, which is a drop in the bucket relative to the 4 billion.
For the 4 billion.
Billion.
Yeah. Right.
Millions, but to billions?
Right.
Okay. It seems like if you really wanted to make a universe that favored us, we would have shown up much earlier. Much earlier. Right. I'm just thinking.
Right.
Just if you
want the argument against that would be that there is no, because God exists outside of time and space, that what we see as 13.8 billion years is not measured by God.
Yeah.
It was at this moment that he knew he f***ed up.
So here he's committing the red herring fallacy. He's just talking about something that's not really relevant to the discussion here. The argument or the question is that why is it that the universe has a constant that, if were changed, would not lead to life on Earth? So this question doesn't get answered. Instead, he's saying something completely irrelevant. He's saying that, oh, but like, why did it take him so long? It doesn't matter why it take him so long. The matter is, there is life here, right? So again, like, this is not a logical objection to this argument. What's funny is that his friend actually brings up a very logical point, which is that obviously if God does exist, he would not be affected by time and space because he would be in control of time and space. It doesn't refute the argument at all. It's just a red herring. But yeah, I guess that's about it. Thank you guys for watching. If you guys like the video, don't forget to like, share, subscribe. And please do subscribe to the channel. It helps a lot. Inshallah, see you next time. Inshallah, assalamu alaikum.